What would make you proud and what would make you happy if you had to retire tomorrow?
This is how you got to understanding your superpower zone, by just questioning yourself, like what I really love and what I know and where is my core deep expertise in, where is the demand, and matching all of these elements.
And I found myself that I had vitals of a almost 80-year-old woman 3 months pre-heart attack. And I'm like, what am I doing to myself? What people don't realize is how much respect you actually can gain from somebody by saying, I have a boundary.
Hello, everyone. This is Kate Syuma. Welcome to Growth Mates, a new season in the company of women, where we will be unpacking fantastic, inspiring growth stories from women leaders, founders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, creators, mothers, and I think superwomen who are just combining all of that. And today I have a woman who doesn't need any other introduction, I think. Elena Verna, welcome to Growth Mates.
Thank you for having me.
It's been very long-awaited conversation for me to have you on this show. I've been honestly postponing that consciously to prepare myself, to prepare the quality of the whole podcast, to welcome such a person like you. And I think I've been following your journey for the last 6 years, since my time at Miro, where I think we crossed paths a little bit, and till that moment when I'm like just inspired by your path, your career path. And as this is the start of the new year, I've been thinking about what can be the topic for our conversation. And I would like to talk to you about the idea of shifting gears in different elements. We will start from career, and we will spend some time discussing that for the businesses as well. And looking at your career, I've seen how you shifted gears several times as well. So you've started in the corporate environment, spent a lot of time at SurveyMonkey, and I think after that you started experimenting and exploring the Solopreneurship as a path. Probably you even introduced that term, because sometimes people are saying that they don't know what is a solopreneur. So let's maybe start from that moment, getting back in time, like 5 years or even more ago. And what was something that, inspired or motivated you to leap into the Solopreneurship as a career path that time?
So first of all, I didn't know it was called Solopreneurship either. Somebody told me I'm a solopreneur, and I'm like, how is that different than freelancer or contractor? And they told me like, well, that's because you have multiple monetization streams versus a freelancer or a contractor just does one project. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That means I am solopreneur. So I definitely cannot be credited for introducing it, because I had no idea what I was doing up until 2 years. Somebody told me that that's who I am. But it actually was not a deliberate shift. It was something that I did as a necessity to try to find a better fitting full-time position for myself. And really what I did is I had a really great run at SurveyMonkey. I kind of grew up in that company. I went there from an analyst all the way to management. I got into growth at SurveyMonkey, and I loved the company, but it was time for me to move on. I really quickly jumped to another company called Malwarebytes. I did stay there for 2 years, but then all of a sudden I realized that it wasn't a great fit for me, even though I wanted to have another 7 to 8 to 10 year run, the same, similar to what I had at SurveyMonkey. So when my time at Malwarebytes was coming to an end, I was trying to understand how is it that I'll find that next position that will fit my superpowers, that will help me with my weaknesses, that will help me learn, that will help me be who I want to be in my career. And I didn't know how to find it. And this traditional interviewing process just seemed so broken. because both sides, the company and the candidate to some extent, are almost lying to each other because they're always just selling, and it's all optimized under acquisition of, hey, sign on the dotted line and fill this position, put the butt in the seat, and it's not optimized for retention. And I really wanted to do a next full-time role. If I was going to take one that would be optimized on retention, that I can stay 5, 6, 7, 10 years possibly to almost replicate what I had at SurveyMonkey. And the way to do it, the only way that I knew how to do it was really from what I would do in my products when I was running a growth team there is, why don't I do a trial? Why can't I do try before I buy? Why can't I do some sort of freemium model with the company to understand whether I'm actually a great fit? So I started doing advising as an equivalent of try before you buy. So I would get to work with company in some capacity, not a full-time capacity. I would get to know the team, get to know the product, get to know the problem, and maybe there's going to be an opportunity there to transition to a full-time position. So advising was my first step into this Solopreneurship world, which then really quickly escalated to other SKUs that I started to offer, such as interim. I started creating courses with Reforge. I started to do public speaking. So all of this started compounding, which I said, well, I need to actually reevaluate my hypothesis whether full-time is the ultimate end goal that I need to have, because as I was getting offered some of the full-time jobs, I'm like, do I really need this? Or do I enjoy what I've built and what I am able to do with advising and all of the other stuff on my own? And the answer to me came to, well, I actually enjoyed this new world of optionality and having multiple SKUs to myself a lot more than just the traditional full-time engagement. But that was probably 2 years of soul searching and discovering, having some hard conversations with myself.
If you didn't know, in addition to making this show, I'm also helping other companies grow meaningful products as an advisor and a founder of GrowthMates. And now I'm also launching a new course, User-Centric Product-Led Growth. My whole career, I've been balancing between business goals and user needs. And you know one truth that I found? What is good for user is also good for a business. I collected all the best practices I learned for over 6 years working on product growth at Miro, interviewing more than 20 industry leaders on this podcast, and preparing proven practices that drove real impact. In this 3-week intensive, we are going to turn your real challenge into a growth roadmap, from quick wins to big bets. And I will be there for you to provide my feedback in live sessions. The course starts already on 24th of March, and for dear listeners, I want to share a discount of $100 with the promo code GrowthMates. I would like to interact with each one directly, and this is why it will be a small group of only 20 seats. The link will be in the episode description, and I would appreciate if you can share it with someone who might find it useful. Hope to see you on the course. And the last announcement. This podcast has a friendly partner, Amplitude, the best tool that can help you get insights you need to drive growth. I've been on the lookout for great examples of thoughtful user guidance, which, to be honest, was not easy to find. But recently, I came across something interesting that Amplitude introduced, their new guides and surveys. Instead of throwing pop-ups at every user, it sends the right message at the right time. Imagine if you're exploring a new feature, it doesn't jump in immediately. It nudges you only when needed. If feedback is requested, it happens right after a meaningful action, not in the middle of something important. If you'd like to influence user behavior in a positive way while respecting each user, check out Amplitude Guides and Surveys, and the link is in description. Wonderful. And it reminds me a lot what I learned from your path when I've decided my sort of transition to solopreneurship, that I actually created also 5 or 4 potential directions that I would like to experiment with. And I think there is a lot of growth approach there, right? So trial, error, and also experimentation. And looking back, I'm on this path for only 1 year, so I'm still learning, soul searching. Everything is happening as we speak. I also have a course. I have this podcast. Luckily, I have some B2B services like advising, onboarding audits, things like that. But what I find quite challenging right now, being just a solo person, how to prioritize, because you want to do these things with a high level of quality, and it requires quite a lot of energy. And sometimes the context switching is also quite huge. So how did you figure it out for yourself when you had several, and you still have several dimensions of your solopreneurship, how to prioritize things well there?
So, context switching is definitely a huge limiting factor. I would say that when you're a solopreneur, your time is your money because that's the time that you're able to invest into something and do something and earn something as a result. But context switching is the limiting factor. For example, I really quickly realized that I cannot advise more than seven clients at a time. I just couldn't shift my brain fast enough to be able to think about the problem, the needed depth and at the needed breadth. So I was like a limiting factor for me. I'm like, okay, so I can only do 6 or 7. If I take an interim position at the same time, then I can only do 1 because otherwise I just don't have enough time. For example, when I was doing courses with Reforge, I scaled back on everything because like that took up all of my time and I needed to have so much depth of putting out the knowledge that I just couldn't have my brain work at that capacity. I also have family. I have 2 smaller kids, so that was really a wonderful opportunity for me to spend more time with them. So I really heavily restricted the time that I would work during the day. So by the time they would be home from school, which is thanks to American school system at 4 p.m., like I needed to be off work so I can go and spend time with them and do whatever is it that I need to help them or to do their soccer practices, their jiu-jitsu practices, and so on and so forth. So to me, time constraints and context switch is definitely a problem. But I also have almost like 2 primary SKUs that I run at any given time, and everything else more goes on the back burner. So as an example, I started with very heavy advising and very heavy interim. And then I pulled back and I did very heavy just courses building for a while. And that was my primary thing that I've invested. Then I pulled back of that and I started doing, again, more interim. I even dipped back my feet into full-time position back again. But right now I'm very heavy on workshops and my newsletter. Those 2 did not even exist 5-7 years ago when I started going solo. So they've evolved throughout my journey. And that's actually, I'm finding a lot more joy doing those 2 than some of the other engagement that I used to do. So now I'm scaling back on the things I used to do more, and I'm putting a lot more effort into things that I just love to do that are within my superpower zone. And I very deliberately sunset other SKUs that I don't find as fulfilling or rewarding or don't have enough traction in the market.
Oh, we will get to this point of like your creator path as well that somehow emerged over time. Before that, I think you touched a very important theme that is probably like a big question for everyone and people who are in a corporation or in a solo path is setting boundaries and setting healthy boundaries with yourself and with your stakeholders probably. And you've mentioned, I think in your content somewhere, I've seen it many times, the menu of boundaries and different areas where you need to set up your boundaries well, like working hours, like gym time, non-negotiable gym time. I love this one. And how is your typical well-balanced day looks like when you set up clear boundaries with yourself as an example, and maybe how others can better set up these boundaries in both corporate setup and maybe the setup when you are making things on your own?
Yeah, boundaries is a difficult topic because it's very scary to introduce a boundary to your workplace because everybody seems to be working around the clock, especially if those people don't have kids and they say, I have kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, like where do I find time for my family? And how do I compete with people and be better than them out of those that seem to be just online all the time, up at any hour, responding to Slack at 3 a.m. in the morning, it feels like you're missing out or you will not get to the same output or outcome if you don't put this much effort. The one thing that I had to step back and really evaluate, almost like forward myself to retirement, and I look back at my career and I try to ask myself what made me proud throughout my career experience. And of course, achieving certain milestones, it used to be titles, now it's more cross optionality that I have in my career, is something that makes me proud. But I also look in saying how much time I spent with my children, how much health do I still have as I'm retiring, which would make me proud to say I balanced my time correctly. So even though it's very easy to get caught up and say I have to work around the clock, at the same time, that's not the only North Star that I have. In fact, that has actually stopped being the North Star probably 10 years ago for me, because I've realized that I can work more efficiently, I can work more effectively and receive the same outcome as somebody that works twice as much time as me. I just need to be more critical and very careful about how I spend my time. And then number two is that work outcomes is not just the ultimate the only goal that I'm going towards. I want to be healthy. I've gotten, it was actually at Miro, I got Whoop, which measures my heart rate all the time and my heart rate variability. And I found myself that I had vitals of a almost 80-year-old woman 3 months pre-heart attack. And I'm like, what am I doing to myself? Like, is this really what I'm working towards, to have a short life? So that was a really big setback for me to say, listen, I need to invest into my health, and that's non-negotiable for me. So that's why for me, I go to the gym every single morning right after I drop off kids. It's non-negotiable. I decline meetings. I decline engagements. If they only have to be that time, no, that's my time. And my time, my health comes above work at all costs, because I want to live till 80, 90 years old. I don't want to be one of those Silicon Valley stories of dying at 35 or 40 years old from a heart attack. So I think it's just like looking at yourself as a whole and saying what would make you proud and what would make you happy if you had to retire tomorrow. Like if you look back at your career, and all of a sudden priorities start to come out pretty clearly as to where you actually should be spending your time. But I have a lot of non-negotiables. Like my gym is a non-negotiable. My weekends are non-negotiable. I'm not working on the weekends. There's no question about it. My evenings after 4 or 6, depending on who I'm engaging with, is completely a non-negotiable. I'm not online. I'm not responding. I'm not meeting. I have declined meetings with CEOs that are like, I can only meet after 6 p.m. I'm like, I can't do it. This is my time with kids, and that's non-negotiable for me. And the crazy part about this is how much respect you get when you present your non-negotiables and say, I just can't do it. I have another priority at that time. A lot of times that we're afraid that we're going to get judged, or we're going to get dismissed, or we're going to be viewed in a lesser way in some capacity because we're not fully committed. What people don't realize is how much respect you actually can gain from somebody by saying, I have a boundary, and this is outside of my boundary. Can we find it within my boundaries?
This is wonderful reminder, I think, for people who are listening to us and to myself personally, because in my story, I think I sort of took with me some legacy from the full-time role to the solopreneurship, that I used to work overtime. I used to think constantly of work, especially just being constantly in that mode I would say for the first 8 months out of 12 months of my solopreneurship. I just repeated that pattern, but on a different type of work. And I think there is a phrase like, what got you here will not get you there. And this is the moment of like reevaluating your boundaries as well. And at this point, I think we missed an important shift that you've recently made back to the full-time role. And it's been after you spent some time in solopreneurship mode, and
over 5 years.
Yeah, I'm sure you've done it with some intention, and I'm very curious to learn what was your intention, what you would like to get from this experience of getting back to the full-time role and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, a lot of people were surprised when I announced that I'm joining Dropbox full time. The interesting part is that people want to see your career choices in binary sense. You're either full time or you're solopreneur. And once you go solopreneur, you shouldn't go full time. And once you're full time, it's scary to explore solopreneur. So they want you almost to be stuck in one mode, either here or you're there, either 0 or 1. The reality of it is it should be a revolving door. It's whatever fits best and whatever opportunities are open in front of you at any given time. And solopreneurship was wonderful. I'll be back with solopreneurship. It's a very comfortable base. It's really leveraging my superpowers, and I will be back there. There's no question about it. I'll be transitioning out of Dropbox eventually. There's it's not going to be an forever role. However, Dropbox presented a really cool challenge. It was a problem with square within my superpower zone. It had fantastic people to solve it with, really great resourcing. It's a public company with over 1 million signups every single week. I mean, for anybody in growth, it's like a kid in the candy store. Oh my gosh, I can do so much. And there's so many customers and so much data and a fantastic analytics team. So I took it as an interim first, and then they invited me to stay full-time. And interims, the issue with interims is that you can't be interim forever. Interim within itself is a short-term engagement. Yes, you're working full-time, but you're short-term. So you have a predetermined end date. And at Dropbox, I wasn't done at that predetermined time. So they invited me to stay full-time, and I wanted to finish the swing, and I wanted to stay longer and see the problem through. So I accepted full-time. That doesn't mean I'm also done with solopreneurship. I still have my blog. I still have my advising client. I advise Superhuman still currently. I still did some workshops on the side. So I carved out time to continue doing some of the solopreneurship baseline, so to speak. But it's a revolving door. It's a time and place. And the time was right for me to dip my toe back in full time, but then I'll back to solopreneurship. I think this is the ultimate goal of optionality, that you have an option to go back full time if you want to, but you don't have to. And once that's done, I don't have to find another full-time position. That is the ultimate career goal everybody should be working towards, that you have ability to choose what you want to do next, as opposed to having to select a previous SKU, so to speak, that you've been at before, because there are no other options to choose from.
It's also interesting to listen to these words in this current, probably, environment when some people feel like we need to be very conscious and careful, and the market is not stable, and this is sort of people become less risky probably as well with their careers, and it's understandable. However,
absolutely,
what you are saying, I think, makes total sense, that you can explore, you can see if it works or it doesn't work. And as further I go with my solo path, I see how many things you can actually build absolutely by yourself, without any sort of employer, without anything, just 0 to 1. The newsletter is possible, the other things are possible. It's more about inner motivation probably, and what you really want from your career.
Well, it's even more so with AI. We will be able to build more and more on a solo basis. I mean, even Sam Altman has a prediction that there's going to be $1 billion company that is one person very soon, because it is easier than to scale yourself. And I also think it's a two-way, because a lot of companies will need more of a part-time talent or very specialized talent, as opposed to having these generalists. Everybody's getting hired to a generalist position. And that's actually the path to a death of solopreneurship, death to optionality, if you become a generalist. Because if you're jack of all trades, if you're like a kitchen sink, let's throw more metaphors at it, then you're really not have a specialty and superpower into anything that is monetizable. Because think about it, when you would go into solopreneurship, you have to find your product market fit. So there is a problem in the space that you have to offer as a solution with your skill set. And the issue is that too many of us are like, oh, I'm a marketer. Oh, I'm a product manager, or even like I'm a growth manager. Like, what does that mean? What is your specialty? Where do you have the depth of expertise? And then that's where you need to go and build your solopreneurship business on. But yeah, if you are, let's say, product marketer, it would be impossible for you to build a solopreneurship business around that, because product marketing can mean a million different things for a million different companies and people. So I think there is a piece here where solopreneurship businesses, I think, are going to get bigger and bigger with a new set of AI tools. I think that companies are going to want more contract-based hires as opposed to these generalists, because generalist skill sets are going to be overtaken by AI, most likely. Those AI agents will be able to perform a lot of it, and you'll just need some specialist to go and manage it, or to create more localization around it, to create more authenticity around the output. So I think it's actually on both sides. My prediction of the future is that more people will be pushed towards more of a solopreneurship type positions to maintain employment, as opposed to traditional full times, because I think full-time positions will be pretty heavily disrupted with AI agents in the future.
This is interesting. And when you are talking about generalist versus specialist, maybe we can give an example of like what is a generalist and what is a specialist, because I currently even sometimes questioning like, am I going too narrow with, let's say, onboarding positioning, or am I going too general with like POG plus UX, for example? We can even take my story or like any story just to make it more specific for people who listen to us and thinking, I'm thinking I'm a specialist, but it seems like maybe not.
Let me give you my example because it's very clear. Throughout my career, on the executive level, I've held multiple positions. I was head of growth, where I was running growth products function, growth marketing function, and analytics. I was head of self-serve, where I had core product design, analytics, engineering, all under me. So it was responsible for also core product and core design as well. Or I was CMO. At Miro, I was interim CMO. I ran the entire marketing function. So it was brand, it was product marketing, it was demand generation, it was growth marketing, it was enterprise marketing. So it was all of that. And all of those are very highly general titles. What does it mean to be a CMO? What kind of company? Are you at Instacart or are you at Salesforce? Those are two very different CMOs at the end of the day. So when I went into solopreneurship, first I went back and I said, which position did I love the most? Which position really gave me a lot of energy? And that was running growth product team. That is where I really shine, and I really love spending unlimited amount of time. So I'm like, all of the marketing, all of the core product pieces are going to fall off. I'm going to focus on growth. But even then, growth product can mean very different things. You can be a growth product at the marketplace. You can be a growth product at the consumer app. You can be a growth product at the B2B application. And all of those are very different skill sets. So I'm like, I've never done marketplace. We get that. Consumer, they have their stuff figured out. I don't think that there's a lot of demand there. They're on point with their growth product functions. In B2B, there is a pretty big demand and lack of understanding of what growth product and self-serve means in B2B. So I'm going to go into B2B. But then even then, like, which industries are you going to focus? Well, I'm not going to focus, let's say, on physical goods and services or just services. I'm going to focus on SaaS. So I'm going to do software only. And then what stage of the company are you going to be with? That one was a little bit easier because I do growth, pre-PM at pre-product market fit or very early stage, immediately fall off. Like I can't help you that much. You need to be making money for me to be able to help you. So I'm focused more on, let's say, Series B or Series A, all the way to public company and above. But also enterprise is not my really big thing. Like I'm really good in the more of that middle section of, let's just say, 50 employees to 2,000 employees. Like that's my sweet spot of where I feel the most productive, and I know how to operate within the company. So as you can see, it starts to dwindle down from the title to a specialty to an industry, which by the way, I'm in SaaS productivity most of the time, like very specifically, and then to the stage of the company, and even potentially even further, if you so wish, on like I focus specifically on virality and activation too, and monetization. So like very specific levers in growth that I specialize in. And that's important because that is my positioning. That is what people know me for. Yeah, I have growth as a title, but it's specifically in B2B and it's specifically more in product. And although I dip into marketing because I think they're too intertwined to treat them completely separately, and analytics is just the two legs that I walk on because you can't be good in growth without knowing your data. But overall, I think that type of like chipping away at the stone until you get to the diamond in the middle of where, yeah, there's a demand, there's fast moving waters in that demand. So a lot of companies are asking or have that problem. And then you can provide a very pointed solution. So can I be a CMO? Sure. I get a bunch of recruiter pinks for CMO and I'm like, please don't. I will be terrible CMO for you. Like, I don't know where in my resume it says that I'm a good CMO for you. I get some pinks for running core product, for GM, for all of the type of positions, but I stay more narrow because that's where I know I love actually working and I love specializing in.
Yeah, and you've mentioned several times your superpower zone. I think this is how you got to understanding your superpower zone by just questioning yourself, like what I really love and what I know, and where is my core deep expertise in, where is the demand, and matching all of these elements.
I actually have two questions that I ask about my superpower zone, which is very clear.
Uh-huh.
What gives me energy? So that some work that like drains me. I might be really good at it, but it drains me when I do it. Versus where it gives me energy, where I'm like, this energizes me. And then where do I feel like I'm better than everybody else? It just clicks faster. I'm able to think a couple steps ahead. So there's a couple areas that I love to do, but I suck at it. Like I just see people like they're so much better than me at it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not my superpower, no matter how much I love it. I can learn maybe to do it, and it's an opportunity for investment. But sometimes I just have to pull back and say, I'm just not good at it. And there's some areas that I'm really good at. So I am faster than everybody else, but it drains me. I dread touching it every single time. So those I stay away from as much as possible. But whenever I get that magical combination, oh, it gives me energy and I feel that I'm better than, or at least as good as everybody else at it, then I'm full steam ahead. That is my superpower.
Interesting. And on that note, probably this is how you uncovered that newsletter is going to be one of the things you would like to keep with your, solopreneurship assets. And but how did you even uncover that? How did you uncover that writing is your thing? How did you uncover your tone of voice, which is actually quite unique? It's like simultaneously funny, serious, expert, and after reading a lot of content you've created, I think this is authentic, right? However, talking about the creator path, how did you ended up being a writer? I think you are a writer these days as well.
I don't know if I classify myself as a writer, but here was my playbook. I first was posting a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn. I was posting out on LinkedIn not to grow my audience, but to create pipeline for my solopreneurship business. I needed to find advising clients. I needed to find interim positions. I needed to find public speaking gigs. And the way that to find it is to let your knowledge to be out there so people that resonate with it and want to learn more and like help operationalizing what they're seeing because it really clicks with them, then they would reach out to me because I no longer had an opportunity to rely on the company who I worked for to create a brand awareness for me. So for example, Miro, where you and I work for, like Miro is a fantastic brand to have stand behind you because like I work at Miro and that gives you so much validation and so much brand awareness. But after I left Miro, I'm like, okay, well, what stands behind me now? So unless people get to know my name, Elena Verna, I really have no brand awareness anymore. So I very carefully balance it with not just focusing on brand awareness, but more focusing on sharing my insights. And brand awareness is just a byproduct of that comes along. But it also helped me qualify my pipeline for advising. So I don't have marketplace companies reaching out to me saying, hey, Elena, can you help us? I don't write anything about marketplace. I don't know anything about marketplaces. If you have marketplaces, please go to Casey Winters. He's an expert at it, not me. So I write very specifically in my niche. And I did it on LinkedIn, as I said at the beginning, and that's just to create more brand awareness for myself, just so I have because acquisition is really hard as a solopreneur, because how do you find companies that actually need your specialty? So for me, it was ungating my knowledge, freemium approach. But then very quickly, I realized that LinkedIn is very much algorithm driven. Algorithm giveth and algorithm can taketh away. So I can have my following and base, but I don't own it. I cannot even reach out to it. I don't have their contact information. And I kept getting pings of like, can you start a newsletter? Can you start a newsletter to put more long form insights into something? So I'm like, English is my second language. I'm actually not a good writer. I have a lot of thoughts, but it's really hard for me to put them in the long form way that is engaging, or it takes me a really long time. So I started writing my newsletter, and it would take me 8 hours to produce one newsletter post. And even afterwards, I'd read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. Like, it's not good. Like, I see typos, like I see structural. I would start using ChatGPT to help me with grammar, but then like it still like not feel the same. So I actually hired an editor to help me. It's all my thoughts. It's all my, he is able to capture like my personality very well as well. And I find always do final editing of everything, obviously, as well. But he helped me with that part of that I was not good at, that was really draining me, even though I love doing it because I love sharing insights, but I'm really bad at writing it. He's been fantastic at getting me over that hump because his superpower is writing. And he's also in the same field as me. So it's like it's very easy for him to understand what I'm trying to say and put it in paper. And we've been working wonderfully together. And newsletter kind of took off on its own, and now I really enjoy it. But it was only when I hired help, because before that, I was just spending ridiculous amount of time putting out subpar results out there. And I just really quickly figured out that there's pieces of this skew that I need help with that I will not be able to do myself.
Interesting. And yeah, I think same thing for me happened. I also found someone who helps me with my content production a little bit. And what another factor that happened as a side effect, it helped me become more structured and committed with this publishing, because I have someone who I need to tell what to do actually. And I have a content calendar now, I like weekly content schedule and things like that. So sometimes as a solopreneur, you're not, let's say, fully alone. You have some people who support you partially. Like, it's fine to find someone who can support you on different sides of things.
You should. You have to, because if you're trying to do everything yourself, especially things that are squarely outside of your superpower zone, but are needed to reach the outcome that you want to do, it's a natural thing. And I think solopreneurship does not mean you work completely on yourself, but it also does not mean you have employees. So we work as a contractor with that editor. He has a full-time position in another company, and it's working great for both of us.
Interesting. And thinking about solopreneurship, as you've said, I'll be back like in solopreneurship someday. It feels like it's not the destination, but it's the format that you'd like to keep. How do you envision it for you, and what inspires you to find new dimensions of solopreneurship? Like you've said, workshops is something you're exploring now. I don't know if you've been actively doing them in the past, but it seems like it's a new area probably for you to operationalize. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, workshop emerged very naturally for me too. When I was trying to get few of my first advising clients, I've noticed there was clients that I really clicked with, and everything just like worked out so well, and I had really great jive with them, and it was longer term relationships too. So it was at least 6 months to a year, so we could see some of the things that I was advising them on actually work through. And then there was some clients that I would get on, and like 6 weeks later, we'd run out of things to talk about because we create such a huge backlog of things that they needed to do. And I'm like, now what? And then we sit, and they ended up being terminating the relationship, maybe resubscribing later. But I'm like, I don't like those, because that just feels like I put in out a bunch of output, but I also want to learn of whether what I'm telling them works or not. So I very much value longevity with my engagement, so I can see it all the way through. But there was a lot of demand of like just that what first step. They weren't ready for me to sign up for full year, let's say, with them, but they needed that boost because they were just starting a growth team or just started to focus, for example, on activation. So I started first off with hiring my advising clients through workshops. So I'm like, you don't know me very well. Well, you've read maybe stuff that I put out. I don't know you. And in order for us to interview each other, let me facilitate a workshop with your team. And if you like what you see, I'll hold the whole thing. And if I like what I see of how you collaborate with the team, so I would ask about 10 team members to join the workshops, then we can talk about moving forward. And that worked wonderfully. All of a sudden, I could screen the companies that I can actually work really long time with. And then the other set of companies just got a ton of value out of that workshop. And they're like, well, we're blown away, but we need to catch up. We didn't realize how far behind we are with some of the fundamental things. So let us get them in order, and then we'll come back to you. So then after I did maybe 15 of those workshops, I'm like, I think I can actually monetize workshop itself. As opposed to doing it only as a screening for advising clients. So now I start every single conversation with, let's do a workshop. That way you can see what I'm selling, and I can see whether you want to even buy that or not. And then we can talk about long-term engagement. And that has worked very well for me to be able to monetize a new thing and really to get engaged with a lot more companies too, like a little glimpse into what's going on in their business, and for me to build more patterns about how different companies are operating and working, and at the same time unlock a new SKU for myself, and then still continuously using that as a prerequisite for my advising agreements.
This is a great idea. I was just writing down like what are the things I need to try out. And if we use the business language, we would say it's something like an open door offer, or think that is like basically more affordable and easy to just do.
Trial.
Exactly.
It's a trial. They get to kind of see what's going on, and then they understand whether it's worth investment going forward, and whether they are willing to provide this type of support for this engagement in order to justify hiring me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we've covered so many things about solopreneurship, and I would love to continue just talking about that because this is what I care about the most. However, I think for people who are listening to this show, they are coming also from the corporate environment and building products that we use every single day. And I would like to spend some time with you to talk about some, futuristic trends, your assumptions about what's going to happen with the product-led growth where you specialize deeply. And I've noticed, talking about shifting gears, basically, I've noticed more and more companies are blending the product-led growth approach with more like product-led sales or even sales-led, or even put more emphasis on sales-led. I've noticed on Miro, like request a demo on the website, big button. I was surprised to see things like that from the company at that scale. And I'm really curious to ask someone like you, and you in particular, what's happening there? What do you think is going on with the product-led growth motion? And the Lenny podcast that you've recorded was something like product-led growth is the future. So is this still the future or not?
So what kind of led growths are there? There's product-led growth, which really just means that product is able to sell itself and all of the experiences are self-serve. There is sales-led, which you have salespeople that are helping potentially acquire customers, even activate them, monetize them, and engage them. There's even marketing-led piece where marketing team acquires the customers, marketing team engages and creates awareness for monetization. I think it's a mistake to think that any company can survive in the purest form of only one something-led framework. That's a failure point. Every single company should have a destination of being product-led, of being sales-led, product sales-led, or marketing-led. All of those menu items should be purchased from the menu. at some point in the end destination for a company. Should every company be product-led? Yes, eventually, whenever it's the right time for the category that is starting to transition to more self-serve habitual usage, or whether it's the right time with new technology being unlocked, whatever it is, product-led is the future for every company, but you can never be a purist in product-led. Miro is a great example. Miro started as a purist and product-led. Everybody was viral in acquisition. They layered marketing on top of it, but viral was still dominating acquisition at the end of the day, of like me creating a board and sharing with you, and then you signing up to be a Miro customer as well. Miro activated customer self-serve, Miro monetized customer self-serve, Miro retained customer self-serve. But that's great for initial traction. But then at some point, in order to continue growing, you need to add other led growth frameworks. So marketing led was added next, where we started doing growth marketing. We started to do some of the demand generation, and then sales was added shortly after. It's a natural progression, and every single company should just be firing against every single growth framework in order to be successful. It's just a question on when it's the right time to layer it on. The one thing that really pisses me off that people are like still think about it again in such a binary way. We were product led, but our investors are pushing us to close more digit deals. Let's just add sales team and pivot to sales led. And that was like the death of the company when they start trying to pivot from one growth framework to another, as opposed to saying, hey, we're good at product led, let's layer. So the language should always be layering, and you always have to find the right time to layer. And usually that right time is when your existing growth framework is stable and it's really reaching scale. So you can start putting some resources to introducing additional growth frameworks into your business model. But it's crazy to think that people think that, the company should either be product-led or sales-led. No, company should be all. It's just a question of when is the right time for them to get there.
Interesting. And do you have an example of like a typical traditional evolution of these layers for your, you say like ICP, like B2B SaaS company, when they typically, even we can take in like, I don't know, imaginary company, AI-based something, and they just get started. And I see even now that people get confused and founders get confused, early stage founders, like when it's the moment to start thinking about product-led growth as we started just pure sales-led motion.
So product-led growth requires 3 major components that have to be true. Customer has to have a motivation on their own to go and solve the problem. That doesn't always exist. So like the demand has to be there. The easiest way to test it is that there's like search volume of the problem that you're trying to solve that already exists organically. So somebody's trying to find it. Number 2, they have to have an ability to execute the task self-serve. Not every single product has the customer be able to do it on their own. So for example, if you are develop a product but you attracted a marketer is not going to be able to perform those developer tasks. So if you have a huge marketing acquisition coming, you can't go self-serve with it because they're going to have to find a developer. So that's a really hard connection because the ability there is broken. And then the last one, which is the most fundamental one, especially in B2B, is does customer have a permission? Do they have a permission to perform this task? I'll give you an example. I worked at Amplitude. A lot of product managers are like, yeah, I need self-serve analytics. I need to understand how customers interact with my product better. I need Amplitude. They'd go into Amplitude and then they'd connect the data sources, data streams, and off they go. However, that can be a data breach for the company if they sent the data to a third party that is unauthorized vendor. So there's simply in some stages of companies that have higher security protocols just don't have a permission to even perform the task, even though ability is there and even though motivation is very much there. So when you have one of those that is not working, your product-led approach will be in jeopardy of whether you'll be able to succeed with it or not. That doesn't mean you cannot do it completely. You can attach some onboarding services to it or some like light human touch to it. Superhuman, for example, did very well. Their ability was hard to onboard because Superhuman is trying to really reteach you of how to use the email, not in the Gmail form, but with all of the shortcuts and a completely new interface. And at the beginning, their self-serve onboarding just wasn't cutting it. People would still use Superhuman as the Gmail, and then they would churn because then it was like not what product actually was built for. So they attached humans to it. And they had an onboarding call with every single customer. And that onboarding call was like opening up the blinders and saying like, this is how you use the product. Forget about how you use it in Gmail. And that worked wonderfully. And it improved their retention. And they gave them time to create self-serve onboarding in the future. So I would say that look for motivation, ability, and permission. If one of those is not there, try to see how you can manufacture it potentially or shortcut to it as to give you time for product to build itself. But there's a fundamental principle that the product should be able to sell itself. If your product is not able to sell itself in self-serve, all of that is going to be dead in the water. So that needs to be the first mantra that is given to product team. Build a product that can sell itself. Then you can go and figure out whether product-led approach is something that you can instrument.
Interesting. It reminds me about one thing I've maybe read somewhere from you. In order for your product to be self-servable, I love this self-servability of the product. It also needs to be quite intuitive, and it's something that I really love using in my language as well, because my core of the thing I care about is user experience, and my background comes from the user experience design, and it feels like it's a non-negotiable priority. If you want your product to be product-led and you want this to happen, these flows, everything that leads people towards the purchase eventually, they should be extremely intuitive. And sometimes I see like companies starting solving this issue from the end, like let's optimize something on the checkout and let's add a couple of upgrade triggers. However, people are just not getting there. They're not creating a habit because the actual experience of the product is not optimal and not like intuitive.
There's not enough design teams that pay attention to monetization awareness throughout your user journey, because as customer comes in and whatever they start doing, how can they learn what they can pay for? At the end of the day, if you're a for-profit company, you need to make money. You need to make money in self-serve by product be able to sell itself. That means awareness is your biggest issue. There's so many product teams, which is like a disease in the product management right now. They build a feature, they put it in the paid plan, and they don't even make it visible in the lower end plans. They don't even go through design reviews of how a lower end plan could learn that this feature exists to trigger an upgrade. And it's just like, this is how a perfect paid state looks like, not how I can create awareness around it. And it's like, it's a fascinating disease that like everybody in product management is affected right now because it's a status quo for some reason. So instead of thinking as a product manager, how can I build awareness for this feature? We only look at the happy state of who already has access and engaging in the feature. And to be fair, 90% of the issues with conversion rates that self-serve products have are due to monetization awareness or lack thereof, because all of the paid functionality is just absolutely hidden.
Interesting. One theme that you reminded me that I really want to write about same thing, but about AI features that are also a part of the paid plan most of the times. They are not a part of the free trial as well, or like a little portion of that. And the adoption of AI features is low, I think. And the return on that investment, it's very, very hard to justify and measure, like the amount of effort taken into building next AI 3.0 version of the product. So this is a topic for one of the future newsletter issues. And as we are getting to the end of this episode, time flies. Maybe just one thing I wanted to ask you, as this is the start of the new year, what one piece of advice you would give to people who are listening to us today on the themes we discussed, shifting gears in career and your business?
I think that we are in store for a lot of changes in the next couple of years, where humans are going to evolve slower than technology will evolve, and we're going to have to catch up to technology evolution. And it's going to create even bigger, almost chasm between people that are left behind versus the ones that are keeping up with the technological evolution. And AI is going to speed up some of that technological evolution, and it's going to change the working environment potentially for us. So the biggest advice that I can have is that just keep your opinions, hold your opinions very loosely. I think that we're going to have a lot of reframing of what we have as true and what we know as our options and how we build our products and how we build our careers in the next 5 years. So hold those opinions loosely and constantly pressure test the hypotheses that you have of what's next for you.
And probably there will be some shifting gears happening for many of us in this future, depending on what's going to happen in these surroundings. Last thing, because Growth Mates is sort of, the name is like saying something that it's a community, but I'm still not into the community mode and not building the community officially. I just like asking people at the end of each episode, who would be one person who you would like to see on this show one day, and what would be the question you would ask this person?
I would actually like to see Yula from Miro.
Oh, me
on the show
too.
one day.
It's hard to invite people or like make visible people who are very not visible, but yeah, I would love to invite her someday.
And the reason I want to see her is she's been with Miro for 10 years. I don't know, maybe even longer. I need to look at her resume. She was one of the first 5 people, I think maybe 10 people hired at the company, and she's still there running growth team. And I think that is a fascinating journey of doing it all completely on your own to running 100% team. And those types of journey, I think, are the most interesting ones.
Absolutely. You reminded me that I need to look for people who are behind the scenes sometimes, and I will try to do that. And thank you so much for spending your time today, sharing many useful tips. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you in this format, finally.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Thank you.